One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights, the only podcast dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of investment banking. Hello, my name is Alex Mason and I'm your host, and I'm so grateful that you're joining me today. Thank you for joining me as we're learning all these basic concepts. And today we're talking about mergers and acquisitions. We've been going through this topic, trying to learn all the basics of what happens when one company buys another company or merges with another company in some kind of combination. And this is bread and butter of what a lot of investment bankers do. So it's super important to understand these concepts, and especially this concept that we're going to talk about today called synergies. And the question today is very simply, what are synergies? What does that mean? Well, synergies, we talked a little bit about this idea of accretion. Synergies are financial benefits where you get more than what the financial model would predict in a linear fashion. So instead of 2 + 2 equaling 4, 2 + 2 essentially equals 5 is how you can think about it conceptually. So you think about economies of scale, like let's say that you're a single person and you're living by yourself, and then maybe you get into a relationship with someone and then you start living together. Well, you start to get certain synergies, right? You start to get economies of scale because you're operating in a single household, even though you're two different people. So you start to see these kinds of things in the world of mergers and acquisitions with companies too. And there are two main types of synergies. The first is revenue synergies, and the second is called cost synergies. So it's just two different sides of the income statement, basically. You got your revenue, and then you got your costs. So with revenue synergies, what does this mean when companies combine and they say that they're going to have revenue synergies? Well, this could mean that they're cross-selling or upselling their products to the combined customer base. And we talked about this concept a little bit in the past too, in other episodes. So if two companies are merging, like they acquire an entirely new base of customers. So if they have existing products that those other customers haven't been exposed to yet, maybe they can share that with them and then they'll buy those products and increase the overall revenue for the combined company. And then there's also this concept of upselling. So selling more premium products in order to increase revenue too. So that's one example of revenue synergies. And then you can also have the fact that a combined company could expand into new geographies more effectively when they combine. So that's another way that revenue could go up in a synergistic way. Now, the other side of the coin is called cost synergies. This is probably the more common one, if I was to guess. And it's just because it's a lot easier to kind of define and talk about costs than it is to talk about increasing revenue, because increasing revenue synergies, it's like very, how should I say it? It really depends on the future and a whole bunch of uncertain variables that may or may not work out. Whereas cost synergies is a lot easier to measure exactly what the costs are and cut the cost to a certain degree. So you'll hear a lot of talk about cost synergies when looking at press releases of mergers and acquisitions, for example. And so what does this mean, this term cost synergies? Well, you could have companies that shut down redundant facilities. They might lay off employees who they find out do duplicative work that they really don't need two people doing the exact same thing. They could probably just consolidate it into one person's full-time job, for example. And you see this with technology improvements also. So that's an example. And then just general consolidation. When you have two companies merging together at the corporate level, like you don't necessarily need two CFOs. Maybe you can consolidate that role into a single CFO, and then the other person can like do some other type of work in the company that's financially related and use their skills some other way. So there's ways that you can kind of bring things together to save some money. So those are some examples of cost synergies. And ultimately, what we're talking about here with both revenue synergies and cost synergies is it's all about leverage, right? And not leverage in the financial sense of borrowing money, but leverage in a more broad sense of the word of getting more out than you put in and essentially making the entire deal more accretive to shareholders. That's really what this whole word synergies is all about, is making it more accretive and making the company more efficient. So that's what synergies is all about. And that's what I got for you today here on Investment Banking Insights. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And we're going to be talking more about synergies here in the next episode. So be sure to join me for that. Until then, have a great day.